Hey everyone, Zach Preucil here. I'm excited to be back again for our February episode of Meet the Musicians. If you've been following along this month, you'll have seen that our theme is the Romantic era, and we've heard about a few different composers. Michelle talked about Wieniawski, and Victor talked about Chopin, and Alex talked about Beethoven and his role in particular in kind of bridging the classical era and romantic era. And so today, I'd like to talk about what happened after Beethoven in terms of the symphonic genre, which leads us to one of my favorite romantic composers, Johannes Brahms. So Brahms was born in 1833, and he lived until 1897. So his life actually spanned most of the romantic era. Of course, his possibly most famous piece in popular culture is the Wiegenlied, or the Brahms Lullaby. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of his compositional output. If you're not familiar with Brahms, I highly encourage you to check him out. He has so much fantastic music that he gave us. In fact, he is often regarded as one of the three Bs, the other two being Bach and Beethoven within the Western tradition. So Brahms was a real champion of absolutism in music, meaning that he believed that music was to be a more subjective thing, where the meaning was interpreted by the individual listener, and the composer was not to impose a narrative. So he wasn't a big fan of tone poems and opera like Liszt and Wagner were doing. But even within that, his music is deeply romantic in his own individual voice. Brahms was really a master craftsman, and all of his music is very calculated and very structured, and within it there's such rich depth and color and character that comes out. So Brahms was a great admirer of Beethoven, and he was also somewhat intimidated by Beethoven. Like many composers of the time, Brahms was not sure about where the symphonic genre would go now that Beethoven's Ninth had been written, with the famous Ode to Joy and the chorus. People were saying, what's next? How could the symphony go any further than this? And as a result, Brahms was somewhat averse to writing a symphony earlier in his career. In fact, he famously said, "I shall never write a symphony. You can't have any idea what it's like always to hear such a giant marching behind you." Of course, the giant being Beethoven. However, he still engaged in a fair bit of orchestral writing earlier on in his career, most notably in his D minor piano concerto, which is basically a dress rehearsal for his first symphony. And he did begin to sketch out what the symphony would look like. Over the course of 20 years, it all came together, and finally in 1876, he felt ready to have it premiered. Now, looking at this work, Brahms 1, we do see some homage to Beethoven. It starts in C minor and ends in C major, just like Beethoven's Fifth, and that goes along with this idea of darkness to light, which was a big romantic ideal that was championed. And then in the last movement, Brahms more or less harkens to the Ode to Joy theme. So, of course, we all know the famous... What Brahms does is... And it does sound rather similar to what Beethoven did, especially when we think about the middle of the Ode to Joy. And then we hear from Brahms. So basically what I think Brahms is ultimately saying here is that we can't, of course, escape Beethoven, and we're acknowledging what he did for the symphonic genre, but now we can move on and have our own later romantic interpretations of the symphony. So again, Brahms wrote 4 great symphonies. I would highly recommend checking them out. And speaking of the 3 Bs, we have 2 of them coming up on our upcoming concert on March 6th at Viterbo. Not Brahms, but we do have Beethoven. We're doing a movement from his Opus 135 string quartet, and the Bach double concerto featuring my colleagues Wes Luke and Aaron Schwartz. And then we have another B, Ernest Bloch, in his Concerto Grosso for piano and strings, and that's featuring Christopher Atzinger from St. Olaf College. So go to lacrossesymphony.org for all the information about getting tickets for that. There's going to be 2 shows on March 6th at 3:30 and 7:30. I don't know what the status is for in-person tickets, but there's always the live stream, so there's a lot of opportunities to experience this great music. And finally, thanks as always for your support of the symphony and the series, and I look forward to being back again soon with another video.